Yo friends, I bought this Oregon electric chainsaw at the beginning of the summer. Probably put about 15, maybe 20 hours into it and thought I'd share some of my thoughts and a review on the product. No, I'm not sponsored by Oregon in any way, but if you're watching this from Oregon and you want to send me money for this review I already made, I won't complain. I'll start out with a quick overview of my review. I'd say I would buy this chainsaw again. I would say I would recommend this chainsaw to specific people who have specific situations in mind for its use. It's not for everyone, it's not for every use, but you may want it still. So this chainsaw is cord connected, which meant for me that it was about a third as expensive as the battery operated chainsaws on the market. You can just plug right into any old home outlet and you can just, kind of squeeze the trigger and it starts going right away. It's pretty easy to operate, pretty easy to use. You do have to buy or already own an extension cord to use this. This won't plug into any outlet itself, but the extension cord will. One of the things they've included here is this loop and this hole to help keep the extension cord from just popping out of this plug every time tension is added to it. With an extension cord attached, I'll just use this for demonstration, you can make a loop and slide it through this hole in the back and wrap it around here. That way, if this was attached here, every time you apply tension, it's not coming unplugged. This is stopping it from getting unplugged every time. For operating the saw, they have this front handguard here, which is standard on chainsaws anymore to help protect you from kickback. You have to start the saw with this in depressed mode here. That way, if there is any kickback, when the saw kicks back, your hand automatically flips that and will turn the saw off. Now, of course, you still want to use all protective measures possible to prevent from the possibility of kickback, but it's there as a nice safety feature. And then for turning it on, they have this little safety button here, so you have to squeeze this first and then squeeze the trigger and it'll start running. On this side is the side cover release knob, which if you spin to unlock, this whole side cover then can come off. This red thing is the chain tensioning ring, which you can spin to tighten up the chain or spin this way to loosen it. Now I've found that this tensioning ring is really hard to spin if this side cover is fully locked. So you kind of have to tension the chain and then lock the side cover in place. Something else I've found is that sometimes when you squeeze this to lock the side cover in place, it adds a little additional tension to the chain without spinning this ring. So you kind of have to adjust a little bit as you go. Generally, I'd say that I have to worry about the tension here on this chain a little bit more than some other high quality chainsaws I've worked with. It's pretty quick and easy to adjust, so it hasn't been that big a deal for me, but it is, I think, an aspect of a slightly cheaper chainsaw. There's this lever here, which is an automatic sharpener. So when the chainsaw is running and the chain is spinning, you pull this and hold it for about 2 seconds. You'll see sparks fly out the back here, and you'll feel the chain itself being rubbed against a stone plate in here, which is sharpening. I don't think it does as good a job as sitting down with sharpening tools and sharpening the chain yourself. I think if I were to really use this chainsaw to its full potential, I would probably sit down and sharpen it on a regular basis and then use that automatic sharpening feature when I'm out in the field and I just don't feel like sitting down, but it needs an extra little sharpening. This is an oil level right here, so you can put the chainsaw oil in here and you can watch to see if it's full and watch it as it gets low. I found that this chainsaw is not as powerful as like your classic gas-powered Stihl chainsaw, but it is able to get the job done. I would say that with this chainsaw, I'm able to process most of the wood on my property. I'd say that this chainsaw handled logs like this really easily. It was very quick to work through. It only took, a handful of seconds to saw right through this. The chainsaw technically has the length to saw through a log like this, but frankly, I really wouldn't want to do it. I did have to do it a handful of times on my property, and I found it was just really slow. Just felt like it took forever and was just way more work than I really wanted to put in. But it was able to get the job done. I had a very large evergreen tree in the front yard of my property with tons of smaller branches spreading everywhere. the chainsaw, I had to make 100 cuts to cut this tree down, and the branches were less than a foot in diameter. It went pretty quick, and I felt like this was a great tool for that job. I also had about a 30-foot segment of this maple that was knocked down before I arrived on the property, and I used my father's Stihl chainsaw to get most of this stuff. I used the, Oregon electric chainsaw a handful of times for that larger stuff, and like I said, it did the job. If you have some of that stuff on your property and you don't feel like spending the big bucks for a fancy gas-powered chainsaw, you could get away with using this Oregon chainsaw, but it should not be your go-to for handling that larger stuff. As for operating with a cord, I would say that it was fine. I think I would rather have a battery-powered chainsaw. It was a bit of a pain to run an extension cord to the far edges of my property, and there was a few times where I didn't have an extension cord long enough, and I kind of had to drag some wood closer to the house. I'd say that the cord got in the way sometimes a little bit. Not really. I wasn't really in fear of chainsawing through the cord itself. You're able to kind of keep that in the back of your mind and keep that cord out of your way, but you do have to move it some. And when I was cutting down, those 100 cuts of that large tree in the front yard, sometimes those branches would fall on the cord, and I would have to kind of move the branches or tug on the cord to try to free up my chainsaw. It was an additional hassle. For me, for how infrequently I use this chainsaw, I would say that slight hassle is worth the hundreds of dollars in savings from buying a battery-powered version of this saw. I would say that this chainsaw is really great for homeowners who have a fairly small property with trees that just need trimming or pruning, or some small to medium-sized logs that they want to chop up, buck up for firewood. If you have a larger property, larger logs, larger trees, I would say that this could be a nice supplemental chainsaw for you if you want to save some gas or kind of have two chainsaws on hand. I might have one bit longer blade, longer saw, Stihl gas-powered saw on hand, and maybe I keep this Oregon chainsaw in my back pocket and swap them back and forth. All in all, like I said, I'd buy this chainsaw again, but only for my specific purposes, only because of the property I have and the size of logs I'm mostly using this for. And if you are in a similar situation, I think I'd recommend this for you.